Spoiler alert. Sauron was given all he probably needs for his One Ring by The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power Season 2. While the exact date of Middle-earth's next Dark Lord's renowned weaponry remains unknown, this most recent installment contains clues suggesting that the time may arrive sooner rather than later. In Rings of Power Season 2, Sauron gained a great deal of knowledge from Celebrimbor, and the show's conclusion left him in possession of a few significant relics that will undoubtedly be connected to his upcoming creation. Sauron left Eregion at the conclusion of Rings of Power Season 2, having tricked Celebrimbor into creating the 16 Rings of Power that will be ruled by him. Naturally, this is just the beginning of his plan to heal Middle-earth. For the corruptive powers to start working, the dwarves and men will need to receive these rings. Durin the Fourth already has the 7, and Sauron will undoubtedly distribute the 9. The villain will then craft his One Ring as his next move. Nevertheless, Rings of Power will have to be inventive because Tolkien never stated how this was accomplished.
Give me your ring.
Welcome to Movie Spy. Hints in Rings of Power point to a connection between Sauron's ring and Morgoth's crown. Maybe the Iron Crown will re-emerge. Sauron has developed a special interest in a few intriguing items that Rings of Power has added to the mix. It was revealed in Season 2 that the new Dark Lord had appropriated Morgoth's Iron Crown for himself, rearranging it to fit and ordering Adar to wear it. Naturally, Sauron was killed by the father of the orcs, using the power of this crown. But at the end of Rings of Power Season 2, Sauron returned the favor by taking the Iron Crown back from Adar, and this is one among the things he is shown carrying as the program ends. Morgoth's crown was never utilized as a component of Sauron's One Ring, according to the Tolkien canon, since it was reforged into a collar to hold the Vala prisoner in the Abyss. But the fact that Rings of Power altered this artifact's destiny suggests it will have a new function in upcoming episodes. As Halbrand, Sauron proposed in Season 1 that Celebrimbor create a crown. However, their original plan was to create rings instead. Maybe the evil from Lord of the Rings had always intended to use Morgoth's crown to rule over Middle-earth, but now he might reforge this artifact into the One Ring once more. Sauron keeping the hammer of Fëanor implies he is going to make the One Ring with it, the ideal instrument for forging Sauron's ring. Fëanor's hammer is the other item that Sauron is holding at the conclusion of Rings of Power Season 2. Known for crafting the 3 Silmarils, the renowned elvish smith Fëanor was portrayed as a statue in Eregion's city circle. Even Morgoth was envious of these exquisite stones, which they took from Fëanor and exploited as a reason for generations of warfare. It is even more interesting to note that Sauron took Fëanor's hammer from Eregion because the Silmarils were originally mounted on the 3 spikes of Morgoth's iron crown. Celebrimbor cherished Fëanor's hammer and strove to surpass his ancestor in the creation of the Rings of Power. It is implied that this deed gave Celebrimbor's creations an additional dash of destiny. Sauron persuaded him to use the hammer himself in order to create the 9. It is evident from Sauron keeping the hammer as a memento of his encounter with Celebrimbor that he has a tense relationship with Eregion's smith. But given that even Morgoth desired Fëanor's Silmarils, it makes sense that Sauron would want to use the fabled elf's hammer for his greatest accomplishment. With his ultimate creation, Sauron's blood trick will certainly be repeated. Sauron acquired knowledge of the need for sacrifice. There seems to be another clue about the construction of Sauron's One Ring in Rings of Power Season 2. Celebrimbor used mithril to create the 3 elven rings and the 7 dwarven rings, but before he could create the 9 for men, the material ran out in his forge. Sauron traveled to Khazad-dûm in search of more, but King Durin III's avarice prevented him from returning with anything. After learning from Celebrimbor that creation requires sacrifice, Sauron cut his hand and transferred some of his dark blood into a vial. Celebrimbor mistakenly believed he was employing polished mithril, but in reality, it was the Dark Lord himself. Certainly, Sauron's lesson on sacrifice is far from over. In the Tolkien mythology, Sauron puts his entire being into the One Ring, making it his most significant invention to date. He will be able to control the other rings of power because of this, but it also makes him dependent on the One Ring's continued existence. Sauron's blood being used to build the One Ring adds another element to Tolkien's mythology. In addition to explaining why Sauron and the Nine had a close relationship, the fact that Sauron's dark blood was a shared component with the Nine would strengthen his bond with the Ringwraiths. What more is needed for Sauron to get his One Ring? A forge is the last thing Sauron needs. Nowhere in Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings was there any hint that Sauron made his One Ring out of his own blood, Fëanor's hammer, or the crown of Morgoth. All of this was a creation of rings of power. But there is one specific component that is a canon need for the development of this weapon. The One Ring is renowned for having been forged by Sauron in the fires of Mount Doom, the only location in The Lord of the Rings where it may be destroyed. As it stands, after the conclusion of Rings of Power Season 2, this location was only formally made available for the Dark Lord. At the conclusion of Rings of Power Season 1, Adar had assumed control of Mordor, causing Mount Doom to erupt and casting a darkness over the region in order to defend his orc offspring. After Sauron persuades the orcs to slay Adar in the second season's climax, Mordor is independent of anybody else. The Dark Lord will undoubtedly establish himself in this sinister realm and use the volcanic mountain as a forge in later episodes. Sauron has all the elements to form his One Ring: the fires of Mount Doom, Morgoth's crown, Fëanor's hammer, and his own black spirit. Thanks for watching.